We continue now at the top of Daf 65b Meseches Avodah Zara. This is Avodah Zarah Daf 65b. On the previous summit, the Gemara said that the father of Rav Acha B'rei de Ravika, who actually was Rav Ika, the Gemara continues the story, Havishafach L'hu Chamra Li'ovdei Kochavim. He would pour wine for the Ovdei Kochavim, for the idolaters. The idea is that he would pour the wine into their wineskins, V'yazal Maver L'hu Maver, and then he would take them across the river by ferry, V'yohavu Le Gulfei Biagra, and then they would give him the jugs as payment. Asu Amru Leili Abaya. They came and they said this to Abaya to see whether this was permitted or not. Amar Lei said to him, Ki katarach be'atera katarach. When he's dealing with the wine, it's still kosher wine. When he's pouring it into their wineskins, it's kosher wine at that point in time, so it's not a problem. But the Gemara asks, V'harotze b'kiyumo to lo nitzdaru zeki. But doesn't he want that the wine should be maintained, that the wineskins should not be torn? Because if those wineskins tear, then he's going to have to put the wine back in the jugs, and he's not going to get his payment. So that should be a problem. And the Gemara answers to that, the Masni Bahadayu, he makes a condition with them, he stipulates with them that if the wineskins tear, then it's going to be their loss. And the Gemara says, Inami, or we can answer, the Maisu Pristiki Bahadayu, they bring certain vessels with them in case the wineskins tear, so they'll be able to catch the wine in those vessels. But the Gemara still asks, Mavra, but isn't he taking them by ferry across the river? And so that should be a problem, because at that point in time, the wine actually is prohibited, and he's getting paid for that. To Katarach Bisura, here he's working, and it's a prohibited situation. And the Gemara answers to that, the first answer is he tells those who are operating the ferry ahead of time, and essentially they're doing it for free. He's not getting paid for that. We'll see Rashi in a moment. Inami denikiti bekitre, or they're holding a knot. Also, we'll see Rashi in a moment, but again, the idea is that there's no payment for that. And Rashi explains, he would pour wine for the Ovdei Kochavim. He was selling to them wine. And when somebody would sell barrels of wine, so usually you're going to give the barrels to the buyers. That's what we say in Hamafkid, there are the barrels, and the Mesoras Hashas changes this from Vashadre to Ushmaria, which means the sediment. There's the barrels and the sediment that normally the purchaser takes, and he's able to sell those in the store. He's able to make more profit besides for the wine, but in this particular case, the arrangement was that he gets to keep the barrels. And so Ravika, he poured from the barrels which they bought from him. He put it into their wineskins, and he was able to actually keep those barrels, and that essentially was his payment. And then he would cross them over the water, and then they would give him the gulfe, they would give him the barrels, the zavun mine ba'agra, which they purchased from him for a fee, and so essentially that was the fee that they were paying to him. And the Gemara then said, Ki katarach lishboch, but when the reason why it should be permitted is that when he's taking the effort to pour, b'didei katarach, he's doing that with his wine. Shayayin eino nesar ad shemagil lekarkois shel zeki didu, because the wine is not forbidden until it actually reaches their wineskins. Rashi explains, zeke shel or, the zeke, those are wineskins, they're made out of hide, and gulfi shel cheres, and then the barrels, they're made out of earthenware. Well, the Gemara later will ask, but isn't he crossing them over on the ferry? And that already is after the point in time that the wine is forbidden, so it should be a problem to take a fee for that. And the Gemara then asked, doesn't he want the wineskins to stay intact after it's prohibited? So that should be a problem. He doesn't want them to tear. That again, their wineskins shouldn't break. Then they're going to need to use those barrels, and they're not going to give them to him, so that should be a problem. And the Gemara then said, Damasni Bahadayu, he makes a stipulation with them, the Inami Mitzru Zeki, that even if their wineskins tear, Lo Yahavi Lo Gulfi, they're not going to give him the jugs, they're not going to give him those barrels. Inami Pristiki Nikite Bahadayu, or they're holding other vessels, Kalam Rekim, they had other empty vessels, Lakabel Hayayin, to receive the wine, Hayotzim and Hanodos, Kishain Misbakin, that let's say their wineskins break, they'll have something to catch it in. They're not going to care if the wineskins tear. And then the Gemara said, well, isn't he getting a fee for crossing them over on the ferry? And so that should be a problem. And the Gemara answered to that two answers. The first answer was, the Amar Leila Mavruya Meikara. He told the person operating the ferry ahead of time. The Gemara, Rashi explains, Ravika Reishin Harahava. Ravika was actually the head, he was in charge of this area of the river. V'yamar leila mavriya l'safin meikara hare yomim rabim koles shiagiu anashim halalu havirim b'chinam. He would tell the person operating the ferry, for all this period of time, this long period of time, anytime people come, you should let them pass for free. And by doing that, essentially, he's not taking a fee for that. And the other answer is kishri. Those are knots. The idea over here is simin hu moser lahem. He gave them a certain sign. Umakirim hasafan, and the person operating the ferry would recognize those knots. Umavirim, and he would cross them for free. V'iu lo tarachmidi. He didn't. There was no bother at all. He wasn't doing anything. The idea over here is that it wasn't that he told them to take everyone for free during this duration of time, but he gave a certain siman to these individuals that would allow them to cross by the ferry. And the Gemara continues with the Mishnah, Yei nesech shenafal al gabe anovim. If you have yayin nesech that fell on grapes, yadichon, you can rinse them off, vehein mutaros, and then they will be permitted. Vim hayu muvukos. Now, if the grapes were split open, they were cracked open, and so then the wine seeped into the grapes, so then asuros, then they are forbidden. Nafal al gabe te'enim or al gabe tamarim. Let's say the yayin nesech, it fell on top of figs or it fell on top of dates. Im yesh bohen benosein tam. If it's enough that it can give a certain flavor, the wine gives its flavor to the figs or the dates, asr, then it is forbidden. Umaisa bebitus ben zonan, and there was an incident with Bitus ben zonan. Shehevi grogros besfina, he brought dried figs on a ship. V'nishtabra chaves shel yayin nesech, and a barrel of yayin nesech broke. V'nafal al gabein, and fell upon them. It fell on the grogros. V'shal lechachamim v'hitirum, and he asked the chachamim, and they said they were permitted. And the Mishnah concludes, Zeh haklal, this is the rule. Kol shebahano also benosein tam, anything that gives a taste that is beneficial, so then asr, then it is forbidden. Kol she'ein bahano also benosein tam, but if it gives a taste that is not beneficial, then mutter, then it is going to be permitted. Kagon, for example, chometz, if you have vinegar, shenafal al gabe grisin, that falls on beans, so that's considered a taste that is not beneficial, and therefore it is mutter. And Rashi explains, Yadicham b'mayim, you rinse it off with water, v'imhayu mevukos asuros, but if they're cracked open, then it's forbidden. And Rashi continues, Grogros ta'enim yeveshim, that refers to dried figs. And kol shebahana also benosein tam, the rule is, if it gives a taste which is beneficial, shenene b'taimo shalisr, that taste of what is forbidden is a benefit. Dahainu b'nosein tam l'shvach, that's also what we call nosein tam l'shvach, it gives a beneficial taste. So then asr, then it is prohibited. V'chol she'ein bahana also b'nosein tam shenene, but if it is not going to be a beneficial taste that it is adding, kagon chometz shenafal asoch grisin, for example, vinegar that falls into beans, the nosen tam lefgam, who that's referred to as nosen tam lefgam, it gives a non-beneficial taste, a detrimental taste, mutter, then it is permitted. And the Gemara says, Ma'isa lister, are you bringing an incident to contradict what you just said? Meaning to say, the Mishnah just said that if it's been no same time, it's asr, it's forbidden. And then the Mishnah brings the Ma'isa with Baitos ben Zonin, in which case it was permitted. So what's going on? And the Gemara answers, Chisure mechser v'hachi katani. There are words missing in the Mishnah, and it should be read as follows. Im no same time lifgam hu mutter. You have to add in the following line. If the taste that is imparted is detrimental, so then it's permitted. U'ma'isa nami b'Baitos ben Zonin, and there was an incident also with Baitos ben Zonin, Shayamevi Grogros Besfina, he was bringing dried figs in a ship, Vinishtabra Chavis Shal Yain Nesach, and a barrel of Yain Nesach broke, Vinafal al Gabein, and it fell upon them, Uva Maisel Lefnei Chachamim Vihitirum, and that incident came before the Chachamim, and they said they were permitted. And the Gemara continues, Hahu Kri Dechiti, there was a pile of wheat, and Nafal Aleh Chavisa Diyain Nesach, that a barrel of Yain Nesach fell upon it. Sharya Rava Lizavune Leovde Kochavim. Rava permitted to sell it to Ovde Kochavim, to sell it to idolaters, meaning it was permitted to get Hana from that wheat. And the Gemara continues, Eisvei Rabba bar Liyuei l'Rava. Rabba bar Liyuei asked Rava the following question. The Brisa says, Beged sha'avad bo kilayim, if you have a garment that's lost within a kilayim, which is a forbidden mixture, sha'avad bo kilayim, Rashi explains, sha'ara kilayim chutecha, there's one thread of kilayim that's woven in there, ve'ein makomo nikr, it's not clear where it is on the garment, but the point is that the beged is now kilayim and prohibited. So harei zeh lo yimcharen al oved kochavim, you shouldn't sell that beged to an oved kochavim, to an idolater. V'lo yasenem ardas lechamori, you shouldn't make it a saddlecloth for a donkey. Avaloso so tachrichin lemeis, and the Mesaras Hashas says to take out the word mitzvah here, but you are allowed to use it for shrouds for a corpse. And the Gemara now asks its question, Lo Ovid Kochavim, my time alo. What's the reason why you can't sell it to an Ovid Kochavim? There's no prohibition against kilayim for an Ovid Kochavim. The Gemara says, Dil ma'asi lizavune liyisrael. The reason is because maybe he's going to go ahead and sell it to a Jew. Well, if that's a concern, hachanami over here as well. In this case, when you have a situation of the pile of wheat and the yein nesach falls upon it, if you're going to sell it to Ovdei Kochavim, so then maybe the Oved Kochavim is going to sell it to a Jew. Hachanami asi lezavune liyisrael. Here also, isn't there a concern that the Oved Kochavim is going to sell it to a Jew? So why did Rava allow to sell it to Ovdei Kochavim? And so the Gemara says, Hadar shara lemitchinu ulemifinhu. So then Rava, he changed his mind, he retracted it, and instead he said that it's permitted to grind up the wheat and to bake the wheat into bread. V'lezavuninhu la'ovdei kochavim shelo b'fnei Yisrael. And then you can sell it to Ovdei Kochavim, to idolaters, not in front of a Jew. And the idea is that bread of Ovdei Kochavim is forbidden for Jews, so there's no concern that a Jew is going to buy that bread from the Oved Kochavim in that situation. And Rashi explains, "V'lo yimcherenu lo Oved Kochavim." Don't sell it to an Oved Kochavim. Can mefarish, as we will explain, Shema yachzor v'yimcher liyisrael, because maybe the Oved Kochavim is going to go ahead and sell it to a Jew. V'hachanami ikol amecha Shema yachzor v'yimcherim liyisrael. Shouldn't that be the same concern by the wheat? Maybe he'll go and sell it to a Jew. And Rashi continues, Tachrichin lamei, says shrouds for a corpse. Tichsib b'meisim chavshi. It says by meisim chavshi that they're free, meaning kevan shemeis adam, when a person dies, nasa chavshi min ha-mitzvahs, he's free from mitzvahs, and therefore it's no problem using it for a mace who's not obligated in mitzvahs. But then Rava said that what you should do is grind it up, ulamifinu, and then bake it to sulo zavin lu yisrael me'ovdei kochavim, because then a Jew is not going to buy it from an oved kochavim, to piton asura, because their bread is forbidden to Jews. Shalo b'fnei Yisrael, do that not in front of a Yisrael. Because if a Jew sees the Yisrael Chavre Mazvin Leila Oved Kochavim, that it's a Jew who's selling it to the Oved Kochavim, Hadar Zavin Leiu Miyad Oved Kochavim, then he's going to buy it from the Oved Kochavim. The Savar Pashal Heter Hisha Yisrael Afa, because he'll think that it's kosher bread because a Jew's the one that baked it. That's why this has to be done not in front of a Yisrael. And the Gemara continues, Tanan, we learned in our Mishnah, Yein nesech shenafal agabe anovim, if you have yain nesech that falls on grapes, yadichon, you just rinse them off, hein mutaros, and they are permitted. Vim hayu mevukos, but if they are cracked open, so then asuros, then they're forbidden. And so the Gemara asks, mevukos, and if they're cracked open, so then yes, it's a problem. She'ein mevukos lo, but if it's not cracked open, so then it's not a problem. And so then why is the wheat a problem? The wheat is not cracked open. And the Gemara answers, Amar Rapapa says, Shani chite, it's different by wheat. Hoel va'agav tzirayu kimevukos damian, since they have these slits, so the slits make them the same as if they are cracked, and that's why it's a problem. And we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Samech Vav Amud Aleph.